I think especially in the future, a lot of the work that we do today, which is specialized, become commoditized. Judgment, decision making, understanding the user experience, translating that into product need. Now that is going to become the primary skill because pretty much everything else is going to get commoditized.
That's where I want to start. I'm just curious, what is going on in technology at Capital One?
Yeah, first let me do a very quick intro so people know who I am. Desikan Madhavanur, I'm the Chief Technology and Product Officer for Capital One Software, which is like the B2B enterprise software business within Capital One. So that's what I run. And lots of stuff happening at Capital One, right? As a company, we're always, breaking forward, we're leaning forward, we take a look at new technology as they emerge. We were the first to the cloud. We were the first to adopt a lot of data-driven decision-making before most other people did it. So you can expect us in that way to be leaning in lots of different domains, from user experience to data. We're all over the place. We're moving ahead and experimenting constantly and pushing new innovations. So yeah, it's another interesting year at breakneck speed, I have to tell you.
What's taking up most of your time right now?
So I'm specifically in the software division, right? So for me, I look at the world in two ways, right? On the one hand, I look at Capital One and what we have done in terms of building assets to manage our infrastructure in the cloud, our data in the cloud, standardizing so that we can leverage cloud without creating bottlenecks. And then I look around and see my customers. I talk to a lot of companies in various industries, not just in fintech, but I talk to people in the healthcare business, in pharma, in consumer goods, in e-commerce. And I see them struggling with things that we have solved over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And for me, the excitement is how can I translate what we have done into tangible assets that can help these companies move forward? And how do we turn that into a commercial business if the opportunity exists? So I'm on the lookout. So on the one hand, it's very interesting. I come from the startup world. You're building new stuff from scratch. And here I'm sitting with a bunch of assets that I know perform at Fortune 100 scale within the bank. And I have exactly the same problems out there in the industry across so many different companies. And for me, it's like, how do I take, what's the most valuable thing that I have to take from what I've got? How do I do it in a way that is truly commercial, truly enterprise software that works across customers? And how do I now turn that into something that I can go deliver and implement? So that's the exciting part of my job. I take a lot of pride in doing that every day.
Do you have something yet?
Yeah, we have one product already in production. It's called Slingshot. This product, so just to give you a background, we've been a huge user of Snowflake. We're one of the earliest users of Snowflake, started in 2017. Probably still one of the top 3 biggest consumers of that technology. To the point where our scale probably, if I can tell you, it's over 1 million queries a day from over hundreds of different applications, 6,000 plus analysts hit it on a daily basis. Now, how do you run this effectively? How do you run this efficiently from a cost perspective, from a performance perspective, from a governance perspective? So over the last 4 years, given Snowflake itself was, growing and creating functions, it was not the most well managed out of the box as a new product in the domain. So we built a whole set of technologies to optimize it, to make it work in a way that you can actually onboard hundreds, thousands of users safely and cost effectively. Now, it produced tremendous success for us in terms of savings, in terms of time, as well as dollars. And we productized that capability as Slingshot. It's now available to try from the Snowflake marketplace. And we have that out there. We have multiple customers in production. So that's our first product that's already in production. And now we're working on the pipeline for the next set that need to come out, as we get more deeper into managing data in the cloud.
Are you going to spin these out into their own companies?
No, at this point, we are not contemplating that. I mean, there is a lot of things that we have to do. Right now, there is a big advantage for these things to stay here within Capital One as a business and deliver them. Because, for instance, a lot of the tech, we leverage internal platforms, even for building the software that we ship, whether it's the DevOps side, whether it's the security side. lots of stuff is built in based on the technology that is proven in Capital One. That's one. Number two, Capital One is probably the biggest tech brand name that's not purely a tech company, that's in the industry. So what we do, we have a huge advantage as Capital One because the software we build is proven to be cloud first. It's proven to be highly scalable. It's battle tested at probably the largest scale you can find. So there is so much goodness for this business to be a Capital One business that we don't contemplate anything else at this time.
So how do you handle the executive structure of it? Like who's running sales for Slingshot? How does that integrate in with what you guys are doing?
So it's a business unit. So in every sense, Capital One Software has its own sales team. It has its own product management and engineering team, right? It receives funding like any other business unit does, right? So without going into too much organizational detail, right? There is a lot of independence and recognition within the company that this is something that we are building not to serve ourselves, but to serve other customers, right? So there is a clear recognition that it will need a different clock speed and different set of talent. So, the reason I'm here, I've been here 10 months, is because they brought me in because I have a lot of experience in the enterprise software space. So there's a recognition of that. So yeah, it is a business unit in the true sense of what you would call from a business perspective. So we have our ability, our go-to-market, our engineering, our product management. We manage our scope, our roadmap, and we deliver our customers the experience that they seek. Obviously, operating under the the Capital One overall umbrella and organization. So that's the way it works. So there's a lot of synergy that we get benefit from, but where we need the ability to make decisions, we have that as well.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And so you came in to run this Slingshot project or just to look for opportunities as a whole?
No, I'm here as a tech and product leader for Capital One Software. Slingshot is the first offering. So obviously I'm working on the pipeline of what comes next and after that and after that. So if you look at it at any point of time, we'll have software that's running in production like Slingshot is. Others that are getting ready to launch after having done some experimentation. We have some like that. And then others where they're purely in incubation. So we have proven it internally, but you got to figure out if that product is a fit in the marketplace. If people want to solve that problem, and does that make sense to make a business? So there is always things in the pipeline at different stages. Slingshot's the one, that's the first product. Look, we launched software in 2022, summer of 2022. So it's not that long. So we have one product in production with real customers and others on the way.
How do you figure out if there's enough of a market to justify it?
We use the standard. Capital One as a company prides itself in being very consumer-driven. So there's a lot of customer testing, validation, strategy development that happens everywhere within Capital One. So we actually benefit from that. So within Capital One software, obviously, the way it does, it manifests itself as we take something that's worked really well and we apply, we go meet customers, talk to customers, get feedback from customers to see how does this translate. Then we come back and look at what would it take to take what we've got to make it this enterprise SaaS product. Is this going to work? And there's all kinds of constraints there. There's a product fit, which is what you would think. But there is even other things. When you have a broad array of things you can do, you have actually a lot of choice. So there is actually a process of prioritizing. Is this something I want to do right now? Is this a pressing problem now? Does it have wide market appeal? So we do a lot of that before we decide where we go. And then it goes through the normal software development process. We have alpha customers, we get feedback. We go through phase gate. It's almost like funding from a startup perspective. Do we fund this thing into a beta? And then it goes to beta. And do we fund this thing into production, to a launch? So that's the phase gates that we use, just like anybody outside. But this is we have the benefit of taking advantage of very well-developed software development life cycles that we have within Capital One across the board. So normal customer validation, normal product market sizing from a strategy perspective that works in card, that works in insurance, works here as well.
And how did you learn how to do all this?
How did I learn how to do this? I've spent about 22 years in enterprise software. I've had, it's an interesting journey. Like I started and my first big win was part of a startup called Edo Open. And this is before the hyperscalers were real. So I had to handle the the cloud stacks, in the private cloud world. And so I cut my teeth there. It was solving how to optimize supply chain networks now that we have the internet and we can actually connect suppliers and customers together. So up until that time, you optimize factories, you optimize warehouses independently, right? You never could take advantage of the fact that there is data that's changing in the demand that should impact supply, because these were not connected. They were sitting in different silos. With the internet, we were able to connect these things. So this software optimized the network. That was the first thing we did, led to an IPO, successful IPO on NASDAQ in 2011. So there, I was able to understand the use case and how technology and changes in technology make things possible, right? And how do you put that together? And obviously, a lot of engineering around what makes a good, manageable cloud stack, right? We had big customers, so I did that. Then in my next journey, I went to a unit, part of Computer Associates, now Broadcom, that focused on cloud management, because the experience of doing the use case translated into how does the technology help more broadly. So I did that, and that was a good experience. Then I went back into the industry with a company called Blue Yonder most recently. And there, that company, we moved it to the cloud. And beyond that, it is the advent of AI/ML, of big data and crunching. So here I was using modern technology around demand forecasting and other areas, predictions, to solve supply chain problems, right? Again, back in the industry. And as I finished that, we had a great exit. We got acquired a year and a half ago by Panasonic. So that was a great exit. When we finished that, I was like, okay, now there is massive opportunity to take this data infrastructures that we worked on and make them more broadly available. So there is a pattern here of use case driving, innovation in tech, and then democratizing that tech. Then new use cases driving more tech. And now for me, as I look here at Capital One, the reason I'm here is it's an unbelievable opportunity to democratize data management in the cloud, which is going to be the biggest problem. Cloud solved a lot of problems in the space. It's created, or several problems that we thought we solved a long time ago have reemerged. And data management, doing that right, is going to be absolutely critical. I think I'm super excited to be here. And this Slingshot is a first example of just cost optimization, right? It's just one part of that, performance optimization. There's so much more to do.
What's a problem that we thought we solved, but it's reemerged?
I can give you a few, right? Let me tell you. The first time we had massive opportunity to use data to make decisions, like I told you before, was when the internet came about and all of a sudden you could connect silos. And now you could optimize networks rather than silos, nodes, right? That was great. That led to problems of integration, problems of non-standardization, problems of data quality. And the way we solved it at that time was locking it in with RDBMS, right, with oracles and DB tools, standardize the schema, put a central IT team in place. Basically, we created central procedures, teams, and policies that mandated that everything be standardized. And that way we got around it for a little while. Now, with cloud, it's changed, right? The cloud stack is very different. Here, you have, if you think about it, that paradigm doesn't work anymore because you have to federate. First of all, relational databases as a technology doesn't scale to the volumes you're talking about. So that's an architectural problem. But if you put that aside, if you just look at the management problem, every team within enterprises have the flexibility to go leverage technology that is custom built for that particular use case. If you have a fast streaming use case, you can get streaming databases. If you have a large data crunching, predictions, forecasting, you can go get the best big data stacks, right? So now what's happened is flexibility and freedom is what's coming in as a way to solve in the cloud. It's re-emerging the exact same problems that the relational databases thought that they solved. Number one, you have no company, very few companies have standardized completely in a single public cloud, which means you have data sitting in legacy systems inside the enterprise. You have data sitting in multiple clouds. And now you have a very weird architecture trying to integrate this, really bespoke architectures to integrate them, which goes back to the time before standardization. That's one problem, integration problems. Number two, the thing that we thought we absolutely solved was data discovery. If you go into an enterprise and you want to know the MDM, master data system, that could tell you where the data was, today, data is everywhere. And the data discovery problem has reemerged as a big thing. Many companies struggle from not knowing where data is. Let's say you can get that data. So let's go to the next one. Today, there's multiple copies of data that teams create in different stacks for the same set of elements, right? There's so much replication, fragmentation happening, which means you do not know if the copy that you're looking at that you discovered has no errors, is clean, has no latency, is current. None of that is obvious. So which means you've brought back the data quality issues that again we thought we had solved is again reemerged. So if you look at it, and then finally fragmentation, right? There's so much fragmentation of data and tools that governance is back to being a problem. Compliance is back to being a problem. So if you think about it, cloud made certain things super easy in the data space. If you want to be a data-driven organization, it's really simplified it. You can get storage at the click of a button. You can get compute at the click of a button. You can get visualization tools at the click of a button. Transformation tools at the click of a button. Everything is easy. And everything has more than one choice. So it made building data-driven applications super easy. What has it led to? The reemergence of the biggest problems we thought we had solved. Data quality, data identification, detection. Where is the data sitting? That is a big problem. Data governance is a big problem, right? So we have got all these problems that we thought we solved coming back in force with cloud. So it's a big advantage, cloud, for building data-driven applications. It's produced the biggest challenges that companies are now facing, a lot of inefficiencies sitting in every enterprise. That's precisely the opportunity I want to take advantage of here.
Does Slingshot address all of these or just a couple of them?
No, Slingshot is very focused, right? Slingshot looks at one thing. It looks at the fact that in this process, when you onboard several users and several applications into a Snowflake ecosystem, now with that flexibility and freedom you've given to the teams, we have tremendous inefficiencies. We have warehouses that are not sized correctly. We have queries that come from applications that are not written well. So all of a sudden, this federation of responsibility in a Snowflake ecosystem means you have serious cost overages, you have governance challenges. What Slingshot does is solve that problem. It goes in and optimizes both the warehouses and the infrastructure itself where you're running through schedules. How often do you need a large warehouse? Can you turn this into a small warehouse when you don't need the large warehouse? Can you actually put it in a mode where it's not costing much, right? And then you have serious SLAs. You have performance requirements. Can we actually right-size it and go hit the performance SLAs when we have to? So all of that is on the infrastructure side. And then on the workload side, queries, the applications that bring in. Why are you doing full table scans? What are you doing that you should actually be doing in memory that you're not doing correctly? So it right-sizes the workload. So it essentially takes cost inefficiencies and governance problems out of the Snowflake ecosystem that customers have. So it's a pretty limited first solution, very effective, but limited there. Now you expand it to all ecosystems. You expand it beyond performance and cost to all sorts of management problems. Now therein lies the big price, right, to go solve.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of opportunity over there. Solve a lot of these problems. As you're doing this and you're building teams and you're growing people and you're solving these difficult problems, when you're looking at the next generation of leaders that you can invest into, like those people that are showing signs, what qualities, what signs do you look for or behaviors exhibited in people that you think to yourself, I should invest some time into them. They're going to become a great leader one day?
Yeah. And this is a very, very important question, and one that we ponder. A lot of times, I'm guilty of this. You rely on expertise. You want to bring in people who know something really well, right? The thing that we have been taught as a collective group, and I have learned this lesson multiple times, the average life cycle of a tool, a system in today's data-driven world is measured in 10, 12, 18 months, perhaps 3-4 years before it gets replaced by the next thing, right? That is how quickly the thing switches. So I look for people who demonstrate clear problem-solving skills. Like, from the ground up, they can go solve problems. And judgment, the ability to understand, is this going to be a market? Is it not going to be a market? So those things take precedence over knowing one domain or a single product or a single ecosystem really well. And just in the last 10 to 12 months, I've done 2 pivots, right? I move around like this seems like a more important idea. And if I don't have the ability of leaders to quickly catch on, make those judgment calls, turn and then start working, it becomes problematic. So, obviously we bring in people who have strong skills in specific areas, like whether it's coding skills or whether it's automation skills. Those are all very important. The true leaders that we look at and say, oh, these people are going to really make a difference are ones that exhibit the ability to, to have quick judgments and the ability to pivot quickly and not have a big learning curve. So that's what we look for continuously. How easy is this for this person to go from problem A to problem B and be effective right away? That is something that we look for. And I think that ability is going to create the next set of leaders, because there's not going to be one. We're not going to have an Oracle generation where an entire generation works on one tool and goes into retirement. I think that time is behind. We're going to have the people who have to get trained, get educated, move on to the next one, and drive innovation there. That's the generation we live in. So that's what we look for.
Yeah, I've noticed that it used to be a lot like that with the Oracle, and then people almost shifted that to stacks. Like, oh, I know this stack. I know these set of tools together. I'm like, well, what's the next abstraction?
That's exactly it. Yeah. And, these abstractions themselves are changing, right? And then depending on the use case, they're changing very, very, very fast. So I'm with you on that, man. I mean, this is evolving in front of our eyes. I think, especially in the future, where a lot of the work that we do today, which is specialized, become commoditized. Judgment, decision making, understanding the user experience, translating that into product need. Now that is going to become the primary skill, because pretty much everything else is going to get commoditized. So yeah.
Say that one more time so everybody can take that in. What's the primary skill?
The primary skill is going to come down to the ability to understand customer need, turn that into real experiences. Because the actual creation of those experiences, the grunt work that we today call specialized, that's going to get commoditized.
Yeah, I remember when I realized that I'd spent the first, 17 years of my career writing software.
Yeah.
And then I realized I'm the construction worker.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's important, absolutely necessary, but like writing the code all day, you're laying the infrastructure, you're laying the groundwork of what is the thing that's valuable in its completed state of bringing value to the market. And so I just climbed up the stack. I was like, all right, if I really like this discipline, but I like more helping people with problems. Yeah. And if I can apply all of my knowledge of this discipline to helping people with problems, and it's like what you're doing. It's a exactly nice pairing.
That's we're doing two sides of the same coin. That's exactly what I'm here trying to do as well, which is problems that are solved in certain places. How do they translate well into emerging problems that are coming out there, and how do we pivot and solve those problems? And that is going to be the name of the game here. People who can't have that clock cycles that turns in an environment where an ecosystem, even a full stack, doesn't last more than 3-4 years and gets completely replaced by the next thing, you're not going to make it. So that becomes very, very important. That ability to pivot, the judgment and understanding customer need, market fit, turning that into real experiences, that's going to be the next big thing.
Tell me about the pivots that you made on Slingshot.
Well, there are a few things that we did, right? For instance, let me tell you, usually you're very customer driven. So you go after the first set of customers. What do they need? That's the journey that we take when we have new products coming on. Yeah, exactly, right? You got to get new products. You got to come in. You got to get people to start paying. So Slingshot attacks the problem of optimization. Now, optimization is a very loosely used term. It means different things to different people, right? For some people, optimization is, let me operate at the lowest possible cost, right? So we went and did this. But the more you climb to mission-critical problems that are being run by Snowflake now, optimization is not just that. For some people, in fact, cost doesn't even factor. Optimization is, how can I optimally deploy capacity to meet all my SLAs? So I meet all my customer needs. So there, it's a very performance-driven journey. And in most cases, what we realize is a trade-off. So the big pivot that we have done is not only to add performance-based optimization as a primary requirement, just as important as cost-based, but then realizing the trade-off is not really a pure deterministic decision. You have to have what-if scenarios. You got to tell people, if you added more capacity, you could meet these SLAs. Is that more important? So there is now a scenario planning capability. So these are all things just within the optimization model within one ecosystem you learn in a matter of 6 months. You go from, hey, I'm going to help you reduce the cost, to Oh, no, I'm going to help you optimize the performance too. Well, I'm going to give you the tools so you can make the right decisions, and then we'll learn from it. And then next time you come in, we'll tell you what's the most likely solution that you should go after. So this is a learning process. I wouldn't call them massive pivots, but these are areas where what we learn has gone in and fundamentally changed how we build certain aspects of our software, right? So, a couple of quick examples.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, what you mean to tell me spending time with your customer makes a better product? Right?
Yeah.
No, I love it though. I'm learning a lot here too.
Most of the times that I've made decisions in my life, not just here, and I look back and said, I should have done this differently. That was a customer feedback that I overlooked. So, we take this very, very seriously. We have a real process, even in our early stages. We are very driven by having good processes. And one of those processes is, how do we deal with customers? How do we get feedback? How do we incorporate that feedback? And how do we pivot quickly based on that? So we do this in a clock cycle that you'd be surprised that we can actually do this. We deploy every 2 to 3 weeks, and we get feedback every 2 to 3 weeks, and we get out. That it's a pretty aggressive cycle of production deployments, especially in our industry, right?
How big is this team? If you're allowed, I'll ask questions. If I hit the edge of stuff you're allowed to publicly disclose, you could just say I can't talk about it. How big is your team? So
let's not get into specific numbers. I think that's a little bit out, but I'll tell you that first, the tech team, if you know at Capital One, is 10,000 plus, right? So it's a massive team. And so in software, we have people who dedicated to software, but we're working on assets that were created in Capital One. So as we get into different products, it's a little bit of those teams work with us, come in, help take that product, because without that expertise, we can't do it, right? So that's why it's I don't want to get into how big is the software team. Obviously, we are large enough to support customers and paying customers in production, right? So we have that, and it expands as we bring in new assets because we bring those people along who know that, so that we can work on that to do this. So it's easier understood in the world of Capital One itself, where the tech team is 10,000 strong that does exactly these kind of assets. A chunk of those people working with the software team work on commercialization at any particular point of time, depending on the product.
Yeah. I mean, I've been surprised I've done like 700 plus of these episodes now. And I've run into companies that I would think are like hundreds of people, and there's like 8 to 10 people. I'm like blown away by some of these abilities we'll look at Basecamp, right? I think they're like 40 people. I could be completely wrong. Josh, if I'm completely wrong, let me know. But they're Basecamp. I mean, they invented Rails, and they're huge, and they've managed to stay like real small. So,
and that is totally true. And look, there are a few things that you do. It depends on the life cycle of the product, right? Early on, it's really small, right? It's a few experts that tested customers. Look, when you go into enterprise-grade customers and you do mission-critical apps, if you move that data, production data back and forth, at those times, there are other functions like customer success, like operations that come in that start to grow just to make sure that we provide the level of support that the customers need. So there is always this, where is the product in the life cycle? And you want to make sure that you don't cut corners on certain functions at certain times. So I'm talking from experience, not here, but where I worked before, right? So obviously, we are very conscious of that. The advantage of being in Capital One is we have tremendous expertise that we can leverage. But at the same time, we are extremely responsible people. Make sure that we invest correctly in the right areas, right?
Yeah. And if you ever need more money for your business unit, you can just call up the other database team and have them add it to your account. No?
I'm not going to go there.
We can joke. I've always wanted to ask that, like as a joke to somebody, but then I'm like, probably not. But it actually does present some pretty interesting questions around data controls, all of which people definitely not sharing on air or, like in a live setting. But I'm always curious, like how much controls are there over my online banking and things like that. But that we don't need to go down that path. There's not a lot of public conversation there, but let's talk more about leadership and you. So typically the people that are listening to the show are either CTOs that want to hear from other CTOs or VPs of engineering or first-time managers or people that want to become managers. So definitely people who are interested in technology and leadership. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get as far as guests coming on and sharing stories is that it's really, really helpful when people share mistakes that they've made as a leader.
Yeah.
Maybe one that they've made multiple times and they've had to learn the lesson and then they finally picked up on it. Do you have any of those?
I mean, we all have our share of mistakes. The two things I'll tell you. The first one is the quicker you can learn from them, and then the stronger the surround team around you, the easier it is to deal with mistakes and learn from them. So I've been fortunate throughout my career to identify the mistakes pretty quickly, as well as have a group of people around me that are pretty straightforward and come to me and tell me, hey, look, this is going sideways, right? So, for instance, in my very first company that went public, right, about halfway down our path, AWS was beginning to become mainstream, right? So I had a true choice. Do I switch over to the public cloud, or do I continue with my private cloud journey, right? At that time, and in fact, it was proven for the next 3-4 years when AWS went through certain cycles and there were certain challenges in managing that stack and their uptime and everything, availability. That my initial decision to go stick with the public cloud with all the instrumentation I had hand built in the private cloud would be the right way to go. And I was pretty certain about it. When we went IPO, I told people, look, it happened because we had control over our infrastructure. But looking back, right, as a company that is still there, I think that probably put a lot of pressure later in that public cloud journey. So, today I look at those decisions with a lot more care, a lot more long-term view in mind, right? Even here in Capital One, when I look at what visualization tool am I using, or what stack choice am I making in terms of, my rollback access controls, and I look at those things, I look at not what I know for sure in the next 2 years maybe, but I look more in terms of optionality in the long term. That's a lesson that I learned that, you cannot optimize. I mean, the deficit that you build, which becomes debt over time, when you make those decisions, which you think at the time are right, get to become a problem. And a lot of people say, hey, the quick learners, the right way that's worked for me is surrounding myself with people who are smart and who are not afraid to pull me up and say, have you thought through this, right? So that's a big lesson. So I surround myself with people, I hire people, I work for people that do that all the time, that question me, that make sure that I have the right motivations in mind. And even if it's suboptimal, at least we all know where the suboptimality is, so we can go back and fix it. So I would tell you that I probably should have jumped on the public cloud sooner than I did. It might have delayed the IPO, but it would have been long-term good for the company, right? So learn from that. Obviously, my next journey with Blue Yonder, which I talked about, we're all in on Azure. I knew right up front that I'm not going to go and try to do any of these things on my own, and that turned out to be an amazing partnership with Microsoft. So had mistakes in the past, but thankfully nothing that was huge in terms of my career or the company itself, and most of which I overcame with good people around me.
That's brilliant advice. Let's wrap up a little bit here. Is there anything else going on at Capital One that you want to get out there to the world, or do you want to tell people, are you guys hiring? Are you looking for people for your team?
Of course. I mean, we're always hiring in this space. You're always looking for talent. This is a talent game. At the end of the day, right? Software is, you're arbitraging people's brain power and skill for, that's what you're doing, right? You're just bringing in people. Without people, you don't have software. So we're always looking for that. And it's a exciting space to be in. We have a very strong, powerful roadmap for Slingshot, what it's going to do in the Snowflake ecosystem with partnership with Snowflake that's coming up. And there is new products that are going to come out that's going to help us, get broader into the data management space. I'll say, stay tuned. We'll be out there in the waves, letting people know what's coming out. And if you're excited about this problem, if you want to solve complex data management challenges in the cloud, we are here. Please reach out, and we'd be happy to have a conversation.